So basically, guys, today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the method I use for flashcards. I still actually continue to study Japanese, and from time to time we'll revisit my flashcards for TCM as well, just to make sure that I'm keeping up to date on stuff. So I don't use flashcards in the concrete way, and I don't use programs like Quizlet or anything like that, and there's a reason for that. Those are really super effective for cramming, for helping you get to the point of studying for your next thing. But what those do is they help commit things to short-term memory. So when you use the standard flashcard method of you look at it in the morning, and then you look at it in the evening, and then you do it twice again the next day, essentially what you're doing is you're keeping it all at the top of your brain. Now that's really effective for helping you get an A on your test. That's 3 days from now. But that's not necessarily going to be the best way for you to remember things in the long term. The other disadvantage to that is that you end up spending a lot more time doing it that way. You spend a bunch of time looking at the same cards over and over again. So what I'm going to show you guys today is a model wherein you don't look at the same material over and over and over again. You don't waste a bunch of time. So basically what's up here, this picture is going to be your big thing, but it's called the Lightener System. There was a German pedagogist named Lightener in the 1970s, and he developed this system in his book, Learning How to Learn. The other name for the Lightener System is spaced repetition. Essentially what you do is you create a method wherein you are only looking at cards that you need to look at. So again, here's the basic thing. Correct answers advance by one deck. All incorrect answers move to deck one. So let's imagine you have 5 different boxes, however you create them, right? Now, when it comes from box 1, which you review every day, if you get the card right, if you understand the material that's on the card, then you move it to box 2. If you have the information right in box 2, it goes to box 3, and so forth. And this has 5 as the terminal, but you could have as many boxes as you want to. Now, at the point at which it becomes that you don't get it right, you don't move it back one deck, you move it all the way back to the beginning, so that you begin the interval process again. The idea is that you recall the material on the flashcard when you don't repeat the flashcard as often. And what you're actually doing as you advance the intervals is you're increasing the depth to which it's in your brain. When we say we know something by heart, at the level of the blood, at the level of your being, like we talk about here, that's not the same as the level of instantaneous recall, right? It's the difference between eating something and you're digesting it, and that food actually becoming sort of the quality of your blood. Well, we talk about the yi being the sort of spirit of the spleen. When something is at the yi level, it's not down in your blood level, right? By the same token, don't study at the yi level. Study at a way that puts things further, puts things deeper inside, actually promotes the digestive process. So, in other words, you look at it. You understand, okay, Li4 is located between the first 2 metacarpals, halfway between at the level of the height of the prominence of the back of the thenar eminence. Okay, I know that. Are you going to look at it again today? No, you're done looking at it today. You will see it again in 3 days. All right, you look at it again in 3 days, you get it right again, maybe look at it again in a week. You can actually set the intervals yourself, so whatever you want. But let's say for just, the sake of conversation that we're saying, this one is 1 day, this one is 3 days, this one's a week, this one's 2 weeks, this one's a month, right? So when something is over here, you have it down. There's no reason for you to waste a bunch of time studying it, because you have it. So you'll see it again in a month. We talked last week about doing things to your learning styles. So this was 2 weeks ago, but we talked about doing things to your learning styles. Well, this doesn't really speak necessarily to everybody's learning style from the standpoint of it's not necessarily the same kind of visual everybody needs. It's not necessarily auditory. It's not necessarily kinesthetic, right? That's the one limitation of doing it in the hard form. But some people who like the tactile experience might still want to manage those things independently. If you do that, it's a little complicated. But
so
yeah.
Do you think, based on that if a person is kinesthetic, that if you actually write cards and put them in boxes, that could possibly, instead of doing it on a computer, for example, that could actually sort of go toward that learning style, help that
Totally.
learning style?
I think so. And so that's even, there is on the bottom here, sort of an explanation here of how you could do it. So, for example, you set up the boxes, you divide it into compartments, and then you move through the compartments. And then, yeah, I really do think making a flashcard is really useful, right? Making the flashcard is going to be useful whether you use the Lightener system or whether you use the standard system. What I'm going to show you besides that, and this I think is actually the sort of little bit of magic here, is a computer program. I've written the URL to download it up here. It's called Anki SRS. SRS stands for Spaced Repetition System. It is a flashcard program. It's really small but really high powered. This is the computer program. This is like the only thing, I don't know why I own this thing, because the only thing I do on it is use Anki. So I'm going to show you the website a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how the program actually works. So if we go to, it'll redirect you to ankiweb.net. I know that seems kind of bizarre. You can use it for phone. The phone app costs money. The phone app costs money so that the desktop app is free. So it's actually overpriced in the thought that the people who are willing to pay for it that way are the people who can afford to do it that way. Anyway, the point is you can get it on your phone, but you don't need to. It will sync up, so you don't have to worry. You can go back and forth between using it on your phone and using it on your computer, and have it be all synced up. The program itself is free if you use it on the computer, and then there actually are shared decks. So, for example, this is the way that I studied Japanese, and so I can go here. But also, if I know it doesn't have a popular category, right, I can still say, type in acupuncture. Well, acupuncture comes up blank. So unfortunately, it means doing it yourself, which I actually think can be an advantage because, as Karen was saying, it's useful to actually make the cards. So here's what the program looks like. Up here on the very top is just my Japanese flashcards. And I'll show you that a little bit just so that you get the sense. I want you guys to know that it actually can target different modalities if you choose for it to. So, for example, here this is the second daughter. And you can't hear it because the audio output isn't there, but it actually has audio output. So this is pronounced Jijo, and there's actually a little voice that says Jijo because I have it programmed to do that. So here I have it go from the one to this is the pronunciation key and then the name, right? But then here's the real thing is that at the bottom here, I have my choice. Do I want to see it again or am I good with it? Oh, so it is coming through there. Let me find one. So for this one, for example, because it's not the first time I've seen the card, I can say, do I need it again in short order? Do I need it again in 10 minutes? Or is it easy for me? Because I already know the material when I see it. All right, and so you can see here, it's 1 minute, 10 minute, 4 days. I have some cards on here that go as far up as 12 years, 14 years, right? So it takes a while to get to that point, but if every single time I see it, I say, oh, I know this, oh, I know this, oh, I know this, versus like, I know it pretty well. So it actually modulates those intervals for you. It manages the intervals for you so that you don't have to worry about having a bunch of different little boxes set up around your room or something like that. So if we were going to create something for, let's say, just to keep up my example, points 1, right? So when we add cards, we have the option to have the reverse card, all right? And we can just select, we can just put a Y there for yes, reverse. But we've got two fields, the front and the back. So if we say, LI4 location, and then we can like plug in Tedmanese, but the other thing we can do here is that this isn't a picture of lung 4, but I can make a picture one of the sides of the cards. So that way, now when I see it, let's assume that this is the Deadman picture. I know it's wrong. When we add that card, when we see it, it'll do a front to back one day, but then the next day it'll do the back to front. So when I see it again the next day, it'll say like, here's a picture of LI4. Can I say when I look at that picture, oh yeah, that's LI4, right? Once again, you self-assess the difficulty, and then it'll tell you how far. Did you have a question?
How do you know you get a picture right? How does it tell you?
Well, so when you
Like, is it keeping score, kind of, whether you get it right or wrong, or are you keeping score?
you self-assess. So,
Okay.
for example, with this one, it's my Japanese deck, but it's the one that'll have the best example. So here it's like, here's the self-assessment, and so it's rated as a good, again, good, easy, and there's actually, for ones that you studied for longer, there's a fourth category, which is between again and good.
Okay.
So there's sort of the category where it's like, I'm not comfortable, but I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to rack my brain and I came up with it. And so they're like, okay, so you shouldn't see this again in 10 minutes, but you should see this again soon. And so that's the like in between that it will give you
Okay.
in that point. I mean, that's essentially the program, right? I mean, it's got a lot of really nice features. Like I said, you can get the shared decks. You can do it to and from pictures. I did it a lot for Herbs 1 and 2 for the zoo cards. I actually did all of the zoo cards that way.
On here?
Yeah,
Do you have to scan them all in?
I did actually. I took pictures from my phone. It was like really, it took a lot of time.
Yeah.
But again, the making is helpful itself. And so then you get to know really those herb card stories. You can do it with the Deadman cards. But also you can just do it, you know, to be super type A about it. You can still just go.
Just type it in.
Just type in some
Herb.
Japanese. I was coming in as the Japanese card, but yeah, you can just, you know, make it really straightforward. And then you could come back and do LI4 needling depth. And what's that, guys? Do you remember?
Is that half a cent? I don't know.
Perpendicular.
Yeah.
2 to 1.5.
So you can say that, but then here's a case where, and this is the important thing, right? If I say yes here, then it's going to spit out in 2 days. It's going to give you a card that says perpendicular oblique 0.5 to 1.5 sun. Well, which point is that? That could be a number of them.
Yeah.
So that's one where you don't want the reverse card. You just want to go from LI4 needling depth to what that is. But for some of them, you want to do it both ways, right? For those ones where you get it both ways, it's actually a really effective way to really study the material because you're not studying it from the same direction. Now, this isn't the only method that you should use, right? I used this, but then also on test day, I would do, there actually is a cram feature on this, and I would use the cram feature, and then also I would, you know, I'm a visual person, so I would like draw out a meridian and then, you know, write the points and then write the indications for that point. You know, so like just as an example, using points as the example, or if it's herbs, I would like still list the category. So my point is not that this is the only studying method that you need, but over time, it commits things to long-term memory so that it isn't just floating at short-term memory, which really, number one, frees up a ton of time for you, and number two, can really be effective in increasing your scores on things. So for me, you know, I love this model because I worked the whole time I was in school, sometimes part-time, sometimes full-time. You know, I was working as a waiter a lot of the time. You're a waiter, you know, you've got to go out and drink a beer with the coworkers after you get done with your shift at 12, right? And, you know, you start at 4 o'clock right after you leave SWAC, and then you still have a test the next morning. Well, how are you going to get it? Well, this is how you get it. Part of that is that it has another amazing feature, which is called time boxing. Are you guys familiar with that concept? Time boxing is when you literally chunk off time. So you say, this is set to, for example, at 10 minutes. It says, it's been 10 minutes. Do you want to stop or do you want to keep going? And you always choose stop. It's been 10 minutes. It's time for you to do something else. So honestly, in 10 minutes, you can do the quality of studying that you could do in an hour if you're just doing regular flashcards. I mean, that's the advantage in this, which means when your life doesn't make room for you, you can make 10 minutes, right? Even in your busiest day, you can probably find 10 minutes. Maybe you can't find all the time you really like to really sit down and open the book and really read everything and really, but you can find 10 minutes. And that's the strength of this. You never study things you don't need to study. You only study things you do need to study. It takes less time, it commits things into longer term memory, which translates to both more time for you and the higher level of knowledge because you're really committing it to deeper memory. So that's actually my entire spiel on spaced repetition and on Anki. That's really, I think, all the information that you need to know to begin implementing this, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about how or why this works.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you told me about this a while back,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried it on, I don't have a Mac, I have a PC.
Mm-hmm.
It does not work like this.
It doesn't.
Mm-mm. So if I brought mine in, could you help me out with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to fiddle around with it. I've actually never seen it on a PC,
Yeah,
just because I haven't.
it's a little different. I can make the cards and I can do some things with it, but then some decks it'll lock me out of.
It'll lock you out.
Like if I've done it for too long, and then I mean, days later I still can't get into it.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really weird.
That is wonky.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
That's
I don't
really,
know-
that sounds
I
like
don't know
a
if I
bug.
did something wrong.
I wonder, honestly,
Sure, it could be just that it's PC something.
well, there's also, they come out with updates all the time, so I wonder if you
Oh,
would try
yeah.
updating the software, it might actually
Maybe.
take care of that problem.
Mhm.
But at the same time, that sucks. So yeah, I would love to take a look at
Yeah,
it.
and some it would let me practice forever, so I
Yeah.
mean, it was kind of weird. But,
Strange.
Yeah.
A lot of times the settings get, I mean, not a lot of times, but it is possible for the settings to get bugged too, so.
And it could be that I just couldn't figure out settings.
Because there are a lot of, and that's the thing, there are a lot of settings that you can mess with. I tend not to mess with any of them, but there are settings you can mess with. So, yeah, if, you know, I'm here on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Mhm.
If you do bring it in, I'd love to take a look, see if we can figure it out.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Do you have to be online to use it?
No.
Oh,
It'll sync. This little button right here is the sync button. So if you get the Anki web, you actually don't need to be able to sync, but you can. And again, that would only be relevant if you also got the phone app. But if you're doing it on your computer, then that's fine. You don't need to, but it gets there. Especially when you do the audio, which is another thing I should have mentioned. I don't know when it would necessarily be useful. If you were truly an auditory learner, maybe it would be useful for you. There is this button, which is the record audio button. Again, don't know when it would be useful unless you were trying to memorize Dr. Allfelder's version of opinion. I don't know when else you would use it, but there is an audio record button. So if that's useful to you, it does exist there. I use it with the Japanese files, like I said before. I don't know when you use it for TCM, but I imagine there'd be a time. So.
Could you say a little bit about what information is good to put on there? So it looked like kind of the obvious thing was is just put as little as possible.
Yeah,
Because like you said, LI4, you did kneeling, then you did LI4
right.
patient, and you did, so.
Yeah, if I was trying to do something really specific, right, then that's what I would do. Like, let's say I'm doing a point, then the cards that I'm going to make for it are going to be location, needling, indications. And if there are any important ones, I'm going to put cautions and contraindications, right? If I'm doing an herb, and so ones I'm going to put an R by ones that I would probably have a reverse card to. So I would put a reverse card for location. Now I might put a reverse card for indications if it's something that is like really very specifically something. Like, so for example, if your LI4 card, if you choose to put in indications or maybe energetics, it's the Gao command point. of the, come on guys.
What number? What did you say?
Right. So then yeah, I would put a reverse for indications. So sometimes, right? For herbs, you know, I would do one for category. Wouldn't do a reverse on that. One for temp, wouldn't do a reverse on that. I would put a reverse for energetics and indications. And what I would do on these actually is I would probably put the really special indications in boldface. And that's what I would do to help me know, right? So, for example, you know, cool herbs to release the exterior, right? It's just sort of like, well, okay, but like, which one is the strongest to move liver qi and is the strongest antipyretic? Well, that's chai hu, so I'm going to put those in bold and on top of the other things that it's going to do, right? If I say that it, you know, lightly moves the liver qi and also has, you know, directs to the throat, then that's going to be bohu relative to the other ones that go to the throat, and I'll know that because also the liver qi aspect is going to be in boldface.
You said the story. So do you think the story from the zoo card?
Oh yeah, the zoo card. So for
like
me,
another one?
For me, that would be another. Would be just yeah. And that was one that I had, was that then the zoo card was going to be the other one. And actually, I would have that as the reverse to see, do I remember what the picture looks like on the zoo card, right? So that would be that. And also, you could still do like point prescriptions this way, right? You could do those reverse too. If you're doing like a basic Machiocha point prescription or something like that, you know, it's just like, well, what's a point prescription for what are some obvious things we do for Winkel-Dampy with kidney yang? Shoot, right? So I mean, it's going to be, you know, spleen 9. What else would you guys want to do on this patient? UB23. You know, without even worrying about.
Kidney point, kidneys.
Yeah. Kidney, you might think about 3 or 7. So, you know, with something like this, and then, you know, if you saw this, right, you could probably guess, oh, this person's got some dampness. And then also, that's fine. We're tonifying the kidney, so you'd be able to reverse engineer it back to that, right? So that's also a good way to study point prescriptions. This is the way I use this a lot when studying for the national boards. So I use this more for my first 2 years, you know, for when you're actually doing points 1 through 4, and for herbs 1 through 3, I did the same thing with formulas, pretty much the exact same thing as this. And then point prescriptions, when you're thinking about the nationals, actually pulling those point prescriptions from TCM tests or from Machiocha or wherever you're pulling them from. And, you know, I think doing it that way, right, when you break it down to discrete pieces of information, then instead, because since you can make an infinite number of cards, right, when you're just making one card for LI4, for example, and you know you have 6 pieces of information on the back, right, when you have the physical thing, it's a lot easier to sort of hold yourself to like, did I really understand this? But like, you know, when you're doing the LI4 card here, right, then you can really be less, let's say less responsible by just saying, okay, I just need to know the location right now, right? I'll get to the needling card later. And so then by breaking it down into more pieces of information, each one of them slowly seeps its way back, as opposed to being a whole bunch of them that you're trying to learn as a bundle.
Well, yeah, and you can, that way you could, if you got the location down but you can't remember the needling, then you can be going over the needling to learn it.
Right.
You can separate out.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So yeah,
You look at needling.
this card goes away. You never see this card again. But then this card,
Right.
you see again tomorrow.
You see again.
And that's, you know, so even though you never have to see this card again, you still have to see this card. And so you're never, you know, so again, you're not spinning your tires in neutral there. So I guess you're never spinning your tires in neutral.
I'm sorry, what was this bottom one in the parentheses?
Oh, cautions and contraindications.
Oh, right.
And I'm just saying, again, it's in parentheses because you don't necessarily need to do it for every point. But for example, you know, LI4, you want 1. You know, stomach 12, you want 1. Right? Lung 1, you want 1. You know, do you really have to know that lung 3 is contraindicated to moxibustion in some ancient texts that aren't even the ones that TCM is based on? No, you don't need to know that. It's in Dead Men.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to test you on it. It's an ancient contraindication that has no logic behind it. So, say it induces counterflow. I don't know. No, don't see any reason why that would happen. It's like somebody puts moxa there and you get counterflow. Yeah, start vomiting. That's I haven't seen it in clinic, but any other questions on? All right, I know it seems really simple, but it's amazing how super effective. I'm sure you guys never illegally download anything, but this is essentially a BitTorrent into your brain, right? You're just taking little pieces at a time and pushing them further and further back, as opposed to a sort of just all model, which I normally really approve of, right? My nose is always in a book when I'm at home, right? But a nose being in a book is amazing for your sort of holistic understanding. But unfortunately, certain parts of what we do aren't about the holistic understanding, right? If we want to talk about the holistic understanding, let's do that. But there's also a certain point where the facts have to get in there, right? So it's sort of, how do you do both? And here's the fastest way to do one, so you can spend more time on the other. It's my take on it anyway. So, all right, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.